Welcome to another edition of Talgro Conversations. The idea behind these web discussions is to get thought leaders in and get them to talk about their perspective on issues that we feel could be exciting and interesting for the larger public out there. While we are doing live webinars, it's important to note that we put up recordings of these sessions on social media, because that's really where the larger audience is. And we realize that not everybody is able to make it at a specific time, especially on working days. Let me quickly introduce the panel. We have a very eclectic here.
Sorry, Jagmohan, you're done. Log the system.
Yeah, I was thinking I'll lock that a little later, Subbu, when a few more people have come in. So Professor Dhruv Nath, Dhruv is from MDI Gurgaon, one of the premier institutions in the country, and one of the hats that he wears there is also as chairman for Center of Entrepreneurship. I'm guessing that must be a very, very exciting place to be, especially in these times, Dhruv. Dhruv has worked with the industry, a lot of organizations. I remember he was senior vice president at NIIT as well before he went to MDI. And many years prior, he was also working in research at IIT Delhi. So that's Dhruv for you. Next is my friend from Gurgaon, Amit Munjal. Amit and I have known each other for a while now, and it's always a pleasure to interact with him, irrespective of the forum. Amit comes from the Kelley School of, he's done his advanced management studies from Harvard Business School. My daughter will probably have a lot of questions for you there, Amit. So I'm just going to kind of throw those at you later.
Sure.
Amit has also been CFO and head of investments, right? Amit, with Citi Holdings in the US?
Correct.
This was New York.
This was New York.
Okay. And currently, Amit is joining us in his capacity as CEO and founder of Dr. Insta, which is a virtual clinic. My take is that they are trying to democratize healthcare, at least specific aspects of that through Dr. Insta. And I think that's a very exciting platform. We'll try and see if Amit can pick some of his responses to what they're doing there. Nilay, we've met very recently, but that's again a very, very exciting person out there. Nilay is CEO and founder of a platform called EasyPay. And Nilay has studied at the Charles Sturt University. Nilay has also made a lot of investments in different startups and different organizations, and I think that speaks volumes about people like Nilay, trying to encourage entrepreneurship out there. And I think that's so important in today's context, not just in India, but across markets. So glad to have you here, Nilay.
And thank you, Jagmohan.
To hear from your perspectives. Abhishek Desai is founder of Crick Heroes, and I know that's a topic which is always very exciting for Indians and Sri Lankans. Abhishek.
Yes.
So Crick Heroes is a mobile-first platform, right? And my understanding is that you guys are trying to bridge the gap between passionate amateur cricketers with international cricketers.
Yes.
Right? And you're using technology to do that.
Yes.
So again, as I suggested to Amit and Nilay, some of the responses could be pegged to what you guys are experiencing in your industry and your business as well.
Sure.
So if my memory serves me right, Abhishek, prior to this, you were also a co-founder and head of product development at Digicorp, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that's a lot of diverse experience there. And I'm hoping this will be a very exciting conversation. So I thought we could talk about, in today's session, we could talk about why this might be an opportune time for online businesses. And while online has really captured everybody's imagination over the last decade or so, during the last 6 months, I think the lines between online and traditional brick and mortar businesses have just kind of, converged, and hence this topic. So my first volley is going to be an open one, and anybody could pick that up. 2 good reasons, according to you, why this might be a good time to start an online business.
I think I can take it. Running an online business in the country for the past few years, I think this is a fantastic time to start an online business because of 2 key reasons. One, the competition from offline is next to none. Most of the offline businesses are struggling because of the high fixed cost structure, whereas in online business, you don't have the kind of fixed cost structure that you would have in an offline business, which means operating a commercial or a retail space somewhere in the expensive bigger cities of the country. The second great reason for an online business start these days is it's highly scalable. No matter whether you're selling service or a product, once you start, you're operational pan-India, which you can't say for offline business. It takes years and years of pinning down the logistics to start the offline business, which is not the case with online business. You could experiment far more. You do A/B testing in a more efficient manner and figure out what is working, what is not. And once you realize the buttons for what is working, you can scale up pretty fast and give great returns to your shareholders, give fantastic service to your clients and customers, and provide employment opportunities to hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of our fellow countrymen all over the country.
Those are some interesting thoughts there, Amit, and I'm going to come back to at least one of those thoughts in this discussion, but I'm guessing we'll do that later because part of the conversation is going to revolve around some of the stuff that all of you are going to talk about at this stage. So thanks for that. Nilay, you have a point there.
Very true, Amit. Very true that online business is scalable. It has opportunity and possibility to go various lengths and breadths. But having said that, India, I'm going to talk solely from India's perspective, so to speak, because India brings its own complexities in online businesses. Given the diverse culture that we have across every 50 kilometers we go, there's a different food that is being served. There's a totally different dialect, if not the language. That's a barrier. So how do you communicate is a major challenge. But yeah, nonetheless, this is the time to scale up the business if you have. And if you don't have an online business, this is an opportunity of lifetime to get into it.
Abhishek, what are your thoughts?
I think what Amit said is absolutely true. There is definitely less competition, not just from the offline competitors, but also from the online competitors per se. Because right now, with lockdown and everything, since the mood is down, I guess opportune entrepreneurs should take this opportunity and start something because of less competition, even in the online segment. So that was one reason, which I think it's a good time to start business now. Having said that, and probably if I may, say something from Paul Graham, who is the founder of Y Combinator. So there is this great article which he has written about when to start startups. But essentially, what he's saying is that the state of the economy, is not going to matter much either ways. Ultimately, at the end of the day, founders are somebody who matters. So state of the economy may give you some boost initially. But over the period of time or duration of the business, if you have to look at it, it is just a rounding error. So I guess, it's always a good time to start business, according to me.
Yeah, and actually, I'm guessing it's not just an online business. It's always a good time to start any business for that matter.
Yes.
Retrospectively, looking back, I left my job at HSBC in 2004 to start it. And now when I look back, there was really nothing stopping me from having done that a decade prior to that. But it's what you keep telling yourself, that maybe let me get this and then this might be the right time. So I'm totally with where you're coming from. Dhruv, your thoughts?
See, you must remember one thing: when you ask a professor to talk, there is no time limit.
Okay, that's enough.
Okay, so one of the things which I've been doing for the past several years, which you didn't mention, Jagmohan, is that I have also been what I call a baby angel investor. I call it an Aam Aadmi angel investor. No connection with Kejriwal, but Aam Aadmi angel investor, which is essentially I've been investing in at an early stage in multiple startups. So what I will share is my experiences from the point of view of an investor rather than from the point of view of a founder, because I haven't been a founder, right? Sure. Now, whatever Abhishek, Amit, Nilay have been mentioning, I agree with that entirely. It's a great time. I just want to put in a couple of caveats because, a lot of people, as part of my investing and mentoring, a lot of people have come to me with opportunities for online businesses. One fundamental question which people do not ask is, are you creating an online business right now, basically assuming that this COVID crisis is going to continue? Because we don't know how long it will continue. It may be 6 months, it may be a year, maybe a year and a half, we don't know. But at some stage, if there is a vaccine, I'm assuming there will be a vaccine, at some stage, when things get back to normal, will your business still be a viable business is a fundamental question people have to ask. So I'll give you a very simple example. Lots and lots of people have got into online education, right? Because classes are suspended, no kid is going to school, and everybody's learning from home, right? Now that's a great thing to get into, but when classes actually start, maybe in 2021, will your business still be viable or not is a fundamental question we ask. So when I look at it, and we've been talking to a lot of investors, both VCs as well as angels, this is the one question they ask. Yes, it's a great time to start an online business, but please make sure that it's an online business which goes beyond the immediate COVID crisis. It is not just to take care of the next 6 months or 1 year, because that's not a viable business. A viable business has to be something which carries on for a long point. That's number one. Number two, what you must also remember is that while we guys are discussing this on the panel, everybody in the country and everybody in the world is saying, boss, online business karna hai. We have to do online business, right? So the issue is that even the big guys, right? For example, you look at a guy like Make My Trip, right? They were into booking of hotels and trips and flights and so on and so forth. Today, because that segment of industry is hit very, very badly, they are into online food delivery, right? So the issue is, yes, it's a good time to start, but please look around to see who are the big guys who can potentially kill you. So these are two caveats you have to keep in mind. Don't just blindly get into an online business.
So I guess what you're saying, Dhruv, in a way is some things don't change, whether now or, even earlier, and which is that one of the lens that you would like to wear when looking at a business is it scalable, right? Is it sustainable?
Yeah.
And that would be true even pre-COVID and many years later as well.
So essentially, COVID times is a good time to start, but it must carry on beyond COVID times, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so that sustainability needs to be built into the model. And the other thing that you mentioned there was the competitive benchmarking, which is don't just rush into it.
Yeah.
Do ask yourself, are there any existing large players? Because remember, you may not have the cash today. Amit spoke some time ago about, it being scalable and not being limited to a particular geography. But then, Amit, again, that requires huge amount of cash burn at times, right? So whereas the bigger players will always have that advantage over you. So there has to be that unique element in your business model, which is able to circumvent that and still make a play for yourself.
And those are standard business practices, which in any case you have to look at.
Sure.
And cash flow management could be done in a very preemptive and proactive manner. Remember, like when we were in business schools a while back, Dell's negative working capital model was the talk of the town, where people were paying upfront and then Dell would use that money which has been collected from the buyers upfront to pay their vendors and get like 45 to 60 days of credit. So in a environment like today, and that's very apt for this conversation, because why it is an opportune time to build an online business. If you build a good quality product or a fantastic service platform for your users, they would be happy to pay upfront for the service they are yet to consume, which means that it won't suck up a lot of the working capital requirements from your side, and you are funding it in the best and the cheapest form of capital, which is the revenue for a company.
Absolutely, and that's always a brilliant model, because what you're really doing is you're getting your customers to actually become your investors, your early investors.
Correct.
And that speaks volumes for the kind of business that you're setting up, and of course, cash flow management becomes so much, better. Nilay, here's a question for you. I mean, given that you've been investing in various businesses as well, very briefly, how do you see the funding landscape having changed over the past few months?
Honestly, in India, what has happened, especially in funding landscape, is VCs or investors are looking to cater to their existing investments, because if you understand their life cycle, that once they've created a fund or they raised a fund to invest in startups or any industry per se, their motive is to make a few X out of it. If not, in a situation like this, they've taken a back foot, according to me, where what they want to do, any investor wants to do, is sustain an existing investment done already. Unless, of course, the new investment that they're looking at is highly profitable, is niche in its segment, and is offering, instead of hundreds of services, is offering one unique service, which is the key driver of the business growth that a particular startup is in, is a profitable venture. Because the moment you go online, there is no boundary. I mean, you could be potentially serving anyone in the world, so to speak. That what we discussed earlier, that that requires heavy cash, and people don't have cash. So the moment they have whatever savings or accruals, that should not go in vain. Rather, that should be invested in the right place. Right now, the investment firms are looking at the founders and their philosophy towards approaching the business, rather than just looking at scale up and the cash burn kind of a model.
Sure. No, that makes sense. That makes eminent sense. Okay, before I ask Dhruv a question, I'm going to request the participants. You will be seeing a whiteboard kind of a screen on your screen. That's really not required, so you can minimize it. The advantage is you'll be able to see all the panel members in a much bigger size and form. Okay, Dhruv, taking off from where Nilay left us, given some of the changes that have been happening in the funding landscape over the last few months, how do you see some of this impacting the ability of new generation entrepreneurs to raise capital?
Okay, fairly long answer. See, 2-3 things have happened, and I will look at 2 levels. One is the VC level, and 2 is the angel level, or the other way around, angel level and then the VC level. A lot of the angels, lot of angel investors are basically businessmen who have got stuck with their existing businesses because of the crisis, and therefore, while they may have the money, their focus is elsewhere. All right. So the number of angels who are willing to invest at today's in today's environment has come down. That is number one. If you look at VCs, some VCs are not really operational or only partially operational. That is issue number one. But the converse is that many of these VCs have already raised funds. Now they can't sit on their backsides. Sorry, can I use that term?
Of course.
Okay. So they cannot sit on their backsides and wait for the vaccine to be developed, after which they will deploy the funds. They have no choice; they have to deploy them. So it's a little interesting, because VCs who have already raised funds are the VCs who are more likely to invest today, VCs who have not raised funds and therefore don't have deployable funds today, I would agree there is an issue, and I would agree with Nilay there. So essentially, you have to be a little careful who you approach. That's part one. Secondly, if you look at the nature of businesses, clearly something which is negatively impacted by the COVID virus, people are not investing in today. That's very, very clear. Something which is neutral, for example, FMCG or essential services or whatever, those are potential areas. And obviously something which is positively impacted, and like I mentioned, is likely to continue to be positively impacted even after the COVID crisis is over, those people are willing to invest in. So I'll give you a very simple example. There is an interesting company. By the way, I'm from Lead Angels Network. So Lead Angels has invested or is investing in an interesting company called Oki Poki. Now, Oki Poki is the nickname of a baby octopus, which is the mascot for this company. Essentially, they take children from the age group of 2 to 6 and they teach them spoken English, right, through an app. Now, what has happened is that during the COVID crisis, Oki Poki's the number of users per month actually boomed. The rate of growth was much faster than it was before the COVID crisis. Number one. Number two, what people also realized was that this is not something which will be negatively impacted once we get back to normal, because you will still have kids, playing on their phones or iPads or whatever at home, even after the crisis is over. So the amount of funding, I can't how much that funding, but the amount of funding these guys were trying to raise from angels, they actually got significantly more. And the reason for that is that people are, while they are on the one hand careful about where they want to invest, where they see a good opportunity, the investments will definitely flow in. So I would say if you're in the right space and if it's a long-term opportunity, yes, the investments can come in. You may have to give up a little bit of valuation because today not too much money is available. But as long as you can do that, money is available for the right kind of business.
So you're saying as long as the fundamentals are still strong,
yeah.
The current situation might not impact it too much. The only difference is, especially for people who are first-time entrepreneurs, their ability to negotiate a better deal for themselves might not be as good as some of the veteran ones.
But I just add to that, since as a prof, I tend to hog the audio, but just give me a minute. One of the issues I've realized over time is if you need the money to grow, and particularly if you're in a B2C business, you will need the money to grow because you will need to market yourself, right? And if there is a delivery involved, you need to get into logistics and you need manpower to develop your website and so on. So if you need money to grow, there is no choice, you need to grow. Because if you don't grow, somebody else will get the same idea and move ahead. So even if you're getting money at a lower valuation today, it makes sense to take it because over time, this auto-corrects. Use this to grow. Next time, in your next round of funding, you'll get a much larger, much higher valuation.
So what you're really suggesting for entrepreneurs is that they need to also take a long-term view, not just in the business, but also in terms of their valuation. Okay, makes sense. Amit, here's a question for you. And Abhishek, I'm going to come to you next. Since we were talking about B2C businesses and especially, the kind of cash burn that would happen in a typical B2C business, especially in today's scenario where a lot of people do believe that, okay, well, there is capital out there, it's like trying to pull it out. For B2C businesses today, do you see the inherent nature of those businesses posing as a challenge to raising funds?
You're right, Jagmohan. B2C requires a lot of cash burn for the first 8 to 10 years, especially in a country like India. And when we in venture capital world always talk about this, that how in some developed countries, freemium model works, where you offer certain features free of cost to the users, and beyond that, you offer the incremental features at a certain price to the same users. So this way, the dedicated users or the performers amongst the users would be happy to pay for those additional services, and you would be cash flow positive. However, in developing countries like India and China, we often see that the freemium model doesn't work. People are spoiled for choice because venture capital industry as well as the entrepreneurs see a very, very large volume of potential users. So they are willing to subsidize, the freemium model with all free model, which again further exacerbates the cash burn situation at the company, and you end up burning far more money than what you would have originally envisioned. So the slow and steady model probably is the right way to go about doing things, especially these days, because it's not about land grab opportunities for these companies that, the more users I have, more eyeballs I have, the higher my valuation would be. At the end of the day, you have to look at, okay, what is my lifetime value of the customer that I'm acquiring, and what is my acquisition cost. So on one side, you have lifetime value discounted to present value. On the other hand, you have the net customer acquisition cost, CAC. So ideally speaking, you would prefer to keep the CAC lower than the lifetime value from this customer. Although we see that many a times in a country like India or in a country like China, those basics of business get compromised upon, and they justify it by the term that I used earlier, land grab, that, okay, the more users I get, somehow, somewhere during the course, I would be able to justify and monetize this large pool of customers. The problem with B2C is customers' loyalty is as thick as the click of the mouse. So today you are subsidizing this customer, tomorrow some other larger, bigger player with deeper financial pockets would be happy to subsidize this customer, as a result of which you are left with nothing but a huge pile of losses. So ideally speaking, you should have both B2B and B2C, and there should be an element of rationality in both the functions B2B as well as B2C, so that you could make a lean and mean machine, which ultimately would be, at least not loss-making for now and profitable in the grand scheme of things.
No, I kind of echo that feeling, Amit. And I mean, I've observed this, especially when I remember 4 or 5 years ago when I was writing this book on the e-commerce space in India along with Komal. This was a book that was commissioned by Hachette. And we interviewed scores of people across industries. And one of the things that we realized was that India is vastly different, even from China. Completely different market when it comes to not just e-commerce, but in general. While they appear to be very similar, but they are not homogeneous, very different. But one of the peculiarities we found in India was that B2C players, if you look at the kind of ad spends that they do, and especially above the line, hell, I mean, that kind of stuff doesn't happen anywhere in the world.
Right.
And just because you have a couple of $1 billion worth of investment at a point in time, I mean, I know it sounds easy to do that. And if that's the land grab, philosophy that I guess you were referring to earlier, but nowhere else in the world has that proportion of the money being spent on advertising, especially for an online business, and that too, not in online advertising, but in print, right? So, and I guess that's where the philosophy comes up, winner takes all. So there may be 6 players, but the guy with the deepest pocket, is able to stick it out. The other guys either fall by the wayside or then they get acquired. And therefore, everybody is in this mad rush of spending, because as long as you remain visible, you feel you're staying relevant. So I echo that.
Sure. I think I can give 2 examples there too. And we saw to second your point about the ad spend above the line in India, we saw that around 20 plus years back in US market, and in a 2 years time frame, it led to a major bubble burst in e-commerce in the US market. So US learned its lesson, and this time the hubris was not as big as we get to see in Indian market. And even in Indian market, we are seeing the net result is not positive. I mean, just a few years back, 2015-16, housing.com spent large amount of money painting every billboard with like housing.com, especially in bigger markets like Delhi, Mumbai, and a few others around the country. And we all know what happened there. Paytm, financial services, wafer thin margins, and they are doling out cash for 50 rupee transaction. They're paying out 50 rupees. And yeah, it may get them some press and publicity initially, but in the grand scheme of things, you end up burning a boatload of cash. So Paytm Mall is nowhere to be found now. It's as dead as any other dead business. Same goes for Paytm mainline business. Look, I mean, Google Pay has spent far less money and is now the market leader, followed by PhonePe. And then where is Paytm today? Probably distant number third or fourth, despite doing a massive ad spend. And these are the survivors, by the way. The MobiQuicks and so many other wallets probably either died or got acquired at throwaway prices by the larger companies out there.
Which is the same case which happened with FreeCharge, if you recall. Yeah. I mean, FreeCharge was acquired at about, if my memory serves me right, at about 2,000 or 2,500 crores. Eventually, when that part of the business was sold off, it sold for a fraction of that. And that's not the only example. There are so many of them. But Abhishek, question for you. Do you see more B2B models emerging out of the situation today or more B2C? And I'd be curious to understand why you feel that way.
Sure. I think situation has changed recently, especially after Indian government banning the Chinese apps and all. So considering that in mind, opportunities for more B2C businesses have suddenly gone up. Having said that, whatever Amit said is absolutely right. Just because you have some regulation advantages does not mean that they will remain long term, first of all, and it also does not guarantee that your business model is strong to sustain a long term business. So we will definitely see a lot of innovations happening in B2C. Specifically because of this situation. But apart from that fact, I guess the time is very ripe for B2B businesses, especially now because of COVID situation. For example, let's say online education is one area where a lot of innovations can happen. And obviously they will have to happen so that they can sustain even once the COVID-19 situation is over. But the thing is that, people are more used to, let's say, work from home now. They have been forced to adopt a new lifestyle. Businesses have been forced to adopt a new way of working, new way of collaboration. So these are some of the areas and some of the opportunities, for example, for building some good collaboration software, let's say like this one, the software which we are on right now. Then there is a lot of opportunity to build a good collaborative education software, a good collaborative B2B platforms for any industry you take. For example, I have been involved with one company called Vastra. They are building a B2B solution for apparel manufacturers and their customers, like retailers and wholesalers and traders. So, things like this, and now they are riding this wave of paperless business, right? Because before them, apparel manufacturers used to have this chits on which the entire business used to happen, right? Now those chits are gone because of COVID-19, and people do not want to trade cash, papers, etc., etc. So those kind of opportunities will definitely come. So yes, time is ripe for B2B opportunities in India, and specifically to solve India-specific problems, I would say.
Talking about opportunities, Nilay, from your perspective, what are the industries you think which will have an opportunity to either create an online business or online model or pivot an existing model into online?
So two things that I would like to bring into perspective. One is India has 350 million smartphones, and 80% of traffic comes through smartphones in India. Now the acceptance of rural India or Bharat is getting there. Now, when we talk about mobile wallets and everything, the top 5% or 10%, whether living in metro cities or highly penetrated consumers, have been overly served by multiple either wallets or by the services. Second important point that in India, we get 1 gig of mobile data at 9 cents, which is lowest in the world. If we were to compare it to US in an article, and I'm quoting, US's per gig is about $8. So we are 80 times cheaper. Hence, the idea is for the world, as far as world is concerned, India to open up in its own online business. So yes, opportunity is definitely right. But now, when we talk about basic things that the online businesses or what areas to focus in for the new founders is probably they need to find a niche. And according to me, the niche always comes from roti, kapda, and makan. And then the lot of other luxurious things that we are talking about. I mean, whatever basic that a human being needs. In the COVID times, we realized that, we can survive with the minimalistic things. Hence, region specific. I mean, I can see lot of startups coming in from UP and Bihar and likes of places where there's a humongous population. I mean, if UP were to be a country, it would be the 6th most populous country in the world by itself. And what the local consumers get is the flavor of India, either coming from Mumbai, Delhi, Gurgaon, Bangalore, which might not be the right thing. So there are multiple entrepreneurs. I mean, like we've seen the rise of entertainmentpreneurs in recent times, where a folk singer gets a superstar rating. And in every region, this is all across every state in India. The same way, there would be multiple niches. Rather than thinking too big at one go, what Amit earlier mentioned, totally true, that, take a baby step in a way, make it sustainable, and then think about growing. Hence, you are not looking at, shelling out too much cash upfront.
Okay, sure. No, I think that makes eminent sense. That makes eminent sense, Dilay. Dhruv, here are a few statistics for you. And I'm throwing these at you given your background. Investor and educationist. Okay. And then later on, I'll come up with the question. So the stats are more, the question's going to be brief. Online sales for FMCG companies have gone up from 2.8% pre-COVID to more than 120%. Right. In fact, the joint managing director of Parle Agro says they are looking at a 10-fold increase in their online sales. That's a huge claim there, right? There has been a dramatic shift in consumer behavior towards online channels. Okay, and this is across industry. So, for instance, in the US, retailers that were primarily brick and mortar businesses, they have seen an online surge of almost 25% in the last 1 quarter, right? Sorry, not last 1 quarter, in the last 1 month alone. In Europe too, there has been a huge spike. In fact, in the month of April alone, the spike was almost 80% that they saw in online businesses. Walmart, the poster boy, of traditional brick and mortar businesses, has saw online business soar 75% in the previous quarter alone. Zara has closed 1,200 stores, but they have invested more than $1 billion in digital operations. Okay, and a couple more statistics there. Online chains have started moving towards new services like BOPIS. So for some of the participants, in case they're not familiar with the term, BOPIS is really a buy online, pick up in store, right? In fact, organizations like Target, for instance, have been building BOPIS capabilities over the last few years, but a lot more organizations have started doing this in the last 4 or 5 months. Now, here's my question. Given all of this and all the changes that we are seeing in this industry, across industries rather, do you see some of these spikes being temporary in nature, which means post-COVID, do you see all of this changing and guys, going back to doing business the way they were? Or do you feel that there will be a new baseline which will come up? So not where it was earlier, not where it is now, but maybe somewhere here, right? Do you see the emergence of a new baseline for businesses as far as online is concerned, or what is it that you see?
Okay. So first of all, the figures that you mentioned, the fact that a lot of sales are now moving online, actually it did not start during the COVID time. It actually started several years ago. So I'm assuming some of you are the next generation, the generation after me. But if you look at my kids are in their 30s, by the way, youngsters in college, 20s and so on, they will go to markets, they will go to shopping centers only, to have a good time, maybe to watch a movie, maybe to sit around in a coffee shop and have a coffee or whatever. Most of their purchases in any case, and this is well before the COVID crisis hit us, was happening online, right? I mean, my son, for instance, he buys his shoes online. I'm amazed because till I've tried out, 8 or 10 options and figured out which one pinches, which one doesn't, I will not select it. He simply orders it, doesn't work, sends it back, orders a new one, right? And I think that has changed in any case. So the answer to, my quick answer to your question, Jagmohan, is whatever had been changing anyway before COVID will continue to change. I don't see that stopping. Yes, COVID has accelerated the process because there are guys like us. For instance, if you look at a person like me, I never bought groceries. Today, we've realized buying groceries on Grofers or Big Basket or even Flipkart has actually become very, very easy. Very, very easy, right? So some of that will probably change, and that will change even after things become safe. We will probably continue to go out, but for other things, not necessarily for shopping. So in any case, this trend had been happening and it will continue to happen. And B, COVID has probably brought in the guys who were not shopping online into some level of online shopping, which will again continue. So I fully agree with that. I just want to add one more quick comment. Investors will look at multiple things. I keep talking of investors. One of the things investors will look at is how has the entrepreneur, how has the founder responded to COVID, right? Now, there are some founders, and unfortunately, I've invested in some of those guys who have sat back and said, Mar gaya, kya karoon? There's nothing I can do, right? And I keep pushing them, but they refuse to move. They said, what the hell can I do? But there are some guys who have grabbed the opportunity and pivoted during COVID times, and they've created a new line of business, right? I'll give you one very simple example. There is a very interesting company which I invested in, and they have a product called Phone Per Loan. Essentially, what that does is through very, very low-cost marketing methods, they give loans to people who normally do not even have a CIBIL score and therefore are not likely to get a loan from anywhere else, whether it is a bank or a Bajaj Finance or a typical NBFC. So what these guys do is they will give loans to lower level employees, people like security guards, nurses, drivers, office boys, and so on. And they're low value loans. So these guys were front ending NBFCs, and the business was growing very well, not a problem. Unfortunately, and it was entirely app based, entirely online. Unfortunately, during the COVID crisis, the NBFCs now had no money to give. All right. So this business stopped. Now, this guy was in trouble because he had manpower, he had an office, he had, bills to pay. So what he did was something very, very fascinating. He says, look, today, because of this COVID, the phobia that people have, health insurance has become a very, very sought after need. Even people in this category, the people I'm catering to, which is the drivers and the peons and so on. Even those guys want health insurance, but they cannot pay for it. So what he did was he spoke to health insurance companies. He says, boss, I will be your front end. I already have my marketing channel. I will get these guys to purchase health insurance from you, but on EMIs. And it's actually very safe because the day the EMI stops, the health insurance stops. Right?
Sure.
Now look at the pivoting the guy has done. It's the same target segment, same kind of marketing. He already has enough of a buzz in the market in this category of people. But now, because he couldn't do loans, he's getting into EMI-based health insurance.
So
and
what I'm taking out of this is that two things. One, COVID or no COVID, it's the mindset of the entrepreneur.
Yes, that's right.
So problems are going to keep happening when you're in business. Today it's COVID, tomorrow it might be something else. How you respond to those problems defines you as an entrepreneur, number one. Two, mindset is one thing. The other is the ability to quickly pivot, to make what is happening outside, the external event, to make it or convert it into an opportunity. How do you do that? That is the other defining characteristic.
Absolutely.
Right? I think that's brilliantly put out there. It's brilliantly put out.
Investors look for this. So in fact, COVID has given both entrepreneurs as well as investors an opportunity to look at each other. So the investor sees if the guy is a fighter, he's able to pivot rapidly, he's worth investing in.
And which is where I guess due diligence and getting into previous exposure to entrepreneurial ventures or what they've done in their work life, that's where all of that comes up. Okay, which brings me to my next question. Amit, given the fact that you worked both sides, I thought it might help coming from you. When you look at investing, let's say in businesses as an angel investor, what are some of the skills that you would look out for, apart from the two that Dhruv has already mentioned?
So the skills that I look at, Jagmohan, when I'm looking at investing is, one, whether the founding team has the right aptitude and attitude toward doing what they are doing. Because their idea would pivot a few times from what they're presenting to me to what would ultimately be a scalable business. But if they have the fundamentals in place, which is like strong problem-solving skills, proven track record in some shape or form, both as a student or as a professional working in a company, and they could demonstrate that they have that fundamental key attribute of grit, which is not to give up despite the circumstances, despite the odds, then those are the critical components which I believe would increase the probability of the success of no matter what they do. Elon Musk said it very nicely. He said that every large company, from the time it was conceived to inception to where it is now, probably would have dealt with 3 or 4 near-death experiences. Yeah. So it's that desire to never give up and keep on fighting, which would segregate the winners from the losers. And one of my favorite quotes there is smooth seas never make seasoned sailors. It was given by Roosevelt. So I feel like Corona is definitely a choppy sea, and any entrepreneur who could develop a boat and navigate that boat in a choppy environment like today would definitely succeed from here onwards.
And I guess that's where a lot of investors, angels or VCs, are also looking at what is the kind of skin in the game that the entrepreneur has. Because if there is no skin in the game and all you're coming out with is what you think is a damn good idea, then there is really very little evidence of how much you're going to stick with that when the going gets rough. So, okay. Abhishek, one skill apart from those that Amit and Dhruv have brought up, which you think is critical for any entrepreneur?
Market. So, so when I say market, whether there is a large market available for the opportunity or for the problem which you are trying to solve. So if the market is small, too niche, it might be a problem. Even in however good the founders may be, obviously they can pivot and all, but it may take a long time. So if the market is big enough, I think this is, I'm borrowing this from like Mark Henderson, who wrote a very nice article on that, market beats founders or market beats timing.
And I'm guessing it's not just the market, it's also the addressable market, because the market could be huge, but how much of it is really addressable?
Yes.
And not just addressable for this particular entrepreneur, given their, capabilities and all of that. Okay. Nilay, one last one from you in terms of what skills you would look for in an entrepreneur while investing.
So, I would say the most important one is the perseverance, because it doesn't matter what, different difficulties are going to come your way. How you ride that wave is up to you as a founder. Very especially, COVID as an example. What Dhruv ji said, what Amit said, and what Abhishek said, I totally agree that, how do you convert a calamity into an opportunity? How quickly can you pivot? I mean, if Sachin Tendulkar wanted to hit a 6 on a bouncer, he needs to place himself right there, anticipate the same thing, and hit the ball for a 6. For a founder, how to be mean at the same time being kind, especially when I'm talking about the Indian scenario. How a founder has to be a thick skin at the same time, considerate about the close loop family of employees and their extended families, especially in a situation like this. So a founder goes through multiple difficulties in their life cycles, and the one who survives, pivots, adapts to the best atmosphere wins the game. But having said that, the most important thing is probably not to repeat the same mistake again. I mean, people are allowed to make a mistake or two, but then if they make the same mistake again and again, they're bound to fail.
I think that's a very powerful statement there. Actually, both of those. One is that persistence or perseverance rather, and the other is the ability to recognize quickly what mistakes you've made and not to repeat those. I think that's, while it sounds so simple, I think the devil is in how one is able to really live it. Okay, I had a lot of questions, but in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you one question, and then I want to leave it open to the audience to put up questions. For the audience, while I respect the fact that you're sending me private messages with your questions, and that's lovely, you might want to use the public chat also to do that, because it'll be easier for me to just pick it up from there. Okay, so before we move to the questions from the audience, my last question for you is, Dhruv, if I came into you as an aspiring entrepreneur, and I mean, let's say if anybody came to you, what is that one piece of advice that you would give them?
And you're coming to raise funds, right?
Yeah, let's say that's the assumption, yes.
Okay. What I look for, and I'll try and just summarize what everybody here has said. We look for hungry entrepreneurs. A guy for whom he's passionate, he's desperate, he wants to make a success of it. Whatever problems come up, he will make a success of it. That's the kind of guy we look for. And by the way, we look more at the entrepreneur than at the business, because if you got the wrong business, because see, businesses will pivot. But if you got the right guy, he will pivot accordingly. So hungry entrepreneur is probably, in 2 words, what I would say.
So that's brilliant. So do they have the hunger, and are they the right person? So you're saying the business comes second, the idea comes second, it's subservient to the individual.
It's important, but the entrepreneur comes first.
And I see that being echoed by so many investors, bang on. Nilay, what is your one nugget of advice to people?
Very simple. Is the idea simple? Can it be registered in people's mind very easily? And does it create a wow factor in consumers' mind? These are the 3 simple questions. And if you can answer these 3 questions, then you can I mean, obviously, what Dhruvji said is totally. I mean, I'm just adding on to that. But given the promoter is hungry, is spontaneous and smart. So next question is, are they able to, kind of keep the idea very simple, just like Google, one search bar saying search, and then build multiple things on the top of it eventually.
So let's call it the 10-year litmus test. Would a 10-year-old understand it if you were to explain it to him or her? And would they be excited about it? Okay, great.
But today's 10-year-olds are smarter than us.
They always were, Dhruv. They always were. We just weren't willing to admit it. Now we've got smart enough to admit it, All right. Amit, what's the one thing that you would want to leave an entrepreneur with if they were to come to you?
What is one thing that I would like to leave an entrepreneur with when they come to you, when they come to me? In this case, I would say some nuggets of wisdom from my past experience, which are relevant to their industry, their company, and their business model, would be the critical contribution from my side if an entrepreneur comes to me and is looking for something of that nature.
So let's make it more relatable, Amit. While I understand where you're coming from, which is using your own experience as potential wisdom for the person. But let's say if you had to put it in a line and it was more generic, irrespective of the industry the person is coming from, what would that be?
What would that be in what sense, Jagmohan? Can you expand more on the question here?
So let's say I come to you for either money for my venture, or I come to you for advice. So, okay, Amit, I'm setting up a business, and this is what the business is about. And because you've been there, done that, what is it that you would like to say to me? Something that I can take away and benefit.
Sure. I would like to see like where the entrepreneur is cut from the cloth, which could make that entrepreneur succeed, which is like the basic attributes that one looks for, which is grit, hunger, as Dhruv mentioned, and the merit of the idea. I mean, whatever they're trying to do, is it 4 times better than what is already existing out there? And can they do the distance by working longer, smarter, harder than the rest of the competitors out there, if they have any competitors? If it is a relatively greenfield concept, then again the same high-level attributes of chutzpah or grit is what I would look for.
So okay, Abhishek, a quick one from you before I move the questions to the audience.
Yep, I think it is not over till it is over.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So simple and yet so beautiful. I echo that. Okay. So the next few minutes are basically to pick up questions from the participants. I'm gonna pick up the ones which are on the public chat first, and then the ones which have been sent to me on private chat because it's easier to pick it up from here. So one of the questions that's come up is, India is a huge market and it's still growing and will keep growing steadily for the foreseeable future. There could be multiple providers of goods and services who could coexist and grow sustainably. Some of the providers would have started earlier and would therefore be bigger than the others. So does that mean that the newer players cannot raise growth capital for themselves? Are they going to be dumped by prospective investors without proper evaluation just because they are late entrants? Which of you would want to pick up this one? Okay, Dhruv?
Just try and give my views. So, first of all, unfortunately, by today, everybody has bright ideas. And any bright idea that you have, it is quite likely somebody's already implemented it, maybe 2 years back, maybe 5 years back, maybe 10 years back. The question is, if it is something, and by the way, what you're saying about multiple businesses can coexist, yes, except that you must remember in the online world, the number of businesses that can coexist is not too many, right? So you can't have 45 Amazons. You'll probably have only 3 or 4 of them. You can have 45, you can have 1,000 beauty salon chains because those are physical businesses, right? But online businesses, ultimately it's winner take all, and you may have 2, 3, 4 winners, that's it, right? So I think you need to remember that, which means if you are in a business where there already is somebody who's large, a mammoth in the environment, yes, unfortunately, it is unlikely you will get funding because that guy can just kill you because he has the power of scale, he has the power of much more discounting than you can give, and so on. However, there are 2, 3 caveats to this. Number one, if what you're doing is different from what the other guy is doing, the big guy is doing, and it does not make sense for him to start from scratch in your area, but it's of interest to him, potentially at some stage, he can buy you out or he can become a strategic investor, right? And that's happening very, very commonly. The other thing is, if you look at even online businesses where there is still a very large amount of scope and where the big guys haven't really reached, is the tier 3, tier 4 towns and even the larger villages, right? Because there, logistics is expensive, delivery charges are expensive. Typically, access will have to be in the local vernacular language. Those things are still open. So if you're planning to get into, let's say, something that, let's say, Amazon is doing, you could do it in these towns. At some stage, Amazon may find it worthwhile to make a strategic investment in you and therefore go ahead with you. So you're still successful, right? So I would say don't try and copy, don't try and do exactly what the big guy is doing, you'll just be killed. But if you can do something which is different, which he will find tougher to do, but it makes sense for him to buy you out or maybe buy a large enough stake, that makes sense. And that is something, that's a business we will invest in.
And I think that makes a lot of sense because in the last few days, one of the trends that I've observed, and I guess we've observed that a little more because it's within our industry. So what's closer to you is always more visible to you. Players who are in the web conferencing business, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so you have your Zoom, you have your MS Teams, the platform that we are using right now, which is our proprietary platform. Now, one of the things that we've noticed is that the web conferencing business or the collaboration tool piece is a very different business, and that's been used very differently earlier. But now, a lot of players have realized the value, or rather the lack of value, of not having an accompanying LMS solution or a learning management system. Education players are asking for it. That's a $245 billion industry which hasn't been tapped really. I'm talking about the traditional industry, not which is already online. That's about 5.4 billion. So we've seen exactly that happening. Very large conferencing players looking at players who have a very differentiated learning management system and saying, hey, okay, can we take a strategic stake here or maybe acquire so that we can have this plugged in and we don't need to reinvent the wheel, which is going to take us maybe a couple of years, and just go to the market, right?
See, you must remember, and I'm trying to talk to the guy who asked this question. You must remember the investor, we guys, the angel and the VC, they are financial investors. They are investing for, let's say, 6, 7 years, 5 years, at the end of which they want a profitable exit, right? So even if your thing gets invested in by a strategic investor at some stage, we still get our exit. We're very happy. And by the way, most online businesses, Mukesh Ambani is willing to invest in, provided they're large enough. So he's invested in Savan for his Geo platform. He's invested in, I think, Haptic. He's invested in EasyGov. So that's an opportunity for you.
Great. Amit or Nilay or Abhishek, any of you want to take the next one? It's it's a tough one. So is it that investors are only going to invest in businesses which have the possibility of becoming unicorns, or even in businesses which may not become a unicorn, but will grow sustainably and profitably? Who wants to take
I
that?
can take that.
Okay.
So I don't think that is true that investors are looking for potential unicorns only. I mean, the technical definition of unicorn is valuation of over $1 billion. So there are like many seed stage venture capital, lead angels, which are willing to invest, knowing that, okay, this business could never be a unicorn, but could still give us 10, 20, 50x the kind of returns that we are looking for. So I don't think that's the definition that would apply for investing, that, okay, we have to invest in what could be a potential unicorn. But clearly you look for scalability, but all this scalability at its peak or potential peak could not achieve a $1 billion valuation or justify a $1 billion valuation, especially in a developing country like India.
Okay.
I have a different view on that. So based on my experience interacting with all the venture capital companies, all of them have looked for at least 100 million revenue business, which potentially makes it a $1 billion valuation company. So, unless and until you cannot show that on Excel, whether you will make it really, happen or not, they really want to see it on paper. And without that, I have not found, any of them interested in investing. For angel investors and seed investors, yes, that is true, what Amit said, because ultimately they get their exit at Series A or maximum Series B. So they don't have to worry about $1 billion valuation. But a person who is coming at Series A is definitely looking at the $1 billion valuation. Because that is his exit.
Let me just add a couple of things. Honestly, the investment scenario, especially from VC, in India is totally different. I'm going to be candid. To me, they are more like loan sharks, follow a herd mentality, where one VC goes in, they follow that. Plus, it seems that like Silicon Valley, the flag bearer in India is Bangalore. So unless you're from Bangalore or NCR, there are multiple problems that founders find elsewhere in India. So those are my 2 cents. But those are the facts. After interacting with multiple
Plus, Nila, you might want to add IIT badge over there. In one of the meetings, I would say, the investor said your idea is so good. It's really nice. I just don't know, whether it will become $1 billion company or not. And I had, heard this multiple times. At one point of time, I was, really going to ask, would it help if I tell that, I am from IIT or I am Ahmedabad? Would you change your mind then? Right. So it really, what Nilay said, there are definitely few venture capitalists who work from that mentality. Having a prestigious institute background really helps. Coming from a city like Bangalore really helps. So yes, those shortcomings are there, but I guess probably they are there in every country. I'm sure in US also, if you are from like a smaller city, you might face difficulty raising funds than you are in Silicon Valley.
So Abhishek, I have heard that concern popping up at a lot of conferences. More so the IIT one rather than the other one. But to be fair to the other side, I think in a lot of places that question also comes up where a business is where the core of the business is very tech. And I think what IIT is really substituting there is how do I put it, as a surrogate or an easy surrogate for one of the skills that would be required to scale up that business. But I do agree with you that could be a bias that one might face on some occasions. And I guess for those entrepreneurs, it becomes that much more difficult and challenging to try and convert that opportunity, despite not having that. And if one can do that, then you really got the investor, in love with you, because they see that you've been able to surmount that one challenge which was there. Okay. My next question is for any of you, which is, it's an interesting one. What potential sectors do you think entrepreneurs should focus on today?
Can I just quickly, idea is not about a particular sector, like Indian parents, okay, today is the time of nanotechnology. So you go towards nanotechnology or become a doctor. It's about a passion within an entrepreneur. It's not that what's working, that's where I'm going to jump in. It's rather, what do I like? I might like writing poetry, and I could make a collage or a portal about poetry. I might like arts, which could be very simply, the best arts platform in India, if not Asia or world. So it's upon an individual rather than you following an industry for business per se. Abhishek, for example, left everything and his love and passion for cricket. He created Cricket Heroes. So there is no comparison between if I were to do the same thing what Abhishek is doing, because I might not have that equal. I might not be equally passionate about cricket. So it's not about which industry to go to. It's what you like and what you'd like to create a baby and make it raise it up.
So I'd like to draw an analogy here, a quick one. I remember during my earlier days of writing, about 15, 16 years ago, when I used to meet up with a lot of authors at writing conferences. One of the questions that always surprised me was, how do I write a book which gets me a booker? Now, therefore, what you're doing is you are starting off with, okay, what's the format for a booker?
Right.
Okay. Now, obviously, that's not a bad idea because there is a format there. The challenge is, if you are going to allow your creative side to get constrained by what you ought to write rather than what you really want to write, you will probably never write a book which sells, let alone, go for the booker. So what I hear you saying is, it's not about the sector. It's about you, what you want to do and where you believe you have a critical differentiation, which would help. Okay. There is another one, which is, are there any sectors that the panel feels that haven't been tapped yet, but could offer great opportunity for entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs? So I guess they're not saying they want to do that, but it's more from an understanding point of view. Are there still sectors out there which haven't been tapped, according to you?
I would say definitely. There are like a whole bunch of sectors. The innovation curve for the world has steepened a lot. So in the past, if it was taking like 50 or 100 years to upend the existing business, it's taking like far less time now. There are definitely new sectors from virtual reality to blockchain to artificial intelligence to Internet of Things, which were not heard of just 10, 15, 20 years back and are relatively very, very new and worth tappable or exploding. Data science would be another sector. And many large companies would be looking for adapting to these new forms of technology in their respective domains. So it's exciting time in the world to live in. We are going to see flying cars, self-driving cars, robotic warehouses in our lifetime only, and all the technologies that I mentioned a couple of minutes back would be definitely new greenfield segments for the new people to venture into and then see where it takes them.
Okay.
Let me just add to that. So I would agree with what Amit just said, and also what Nilay said. I think ultimately it is what you want to do. Just make sure it follows. By the way, I've written a book which, had COVID not happened, it would have come out. It's on funding startups. So in that, I've tried to put down 4 or 5 things which are important before you decide to launch a venture. A, are you solving a problem? Will people be willing to pay for it? Is it a large enough market? Is it a scalable business? Do you have a revenue model? Because growth at any cost is not going to get you anywhere. And finally, do you have an entry barrier, right? So as long as these are there, sector actually doesn't matter. Just avoid, the obvious ones, like in today's environment, tourism, hotel, restaurants, gyms. Because these are sectors you have no idea what's going to happen, at least for the next 6 months to 1 year. So that's one part of the story. The other part is, what is very important is, once you've identified the sector, whichever sector you're in, whichever business you're in, look for opportunities which people haven't grabbed so far. And I would say, rather than opportunities, it is going to be geography. So going into tier 2, not even tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, going into rural, those are untapped markets as of now, or less tapped markets right now. Technology will reach there, but if you can do those, chances are you'll be ahead of other people. I just want to mention one important comment, since Amit spoke about technology. There is an interesting guy who came to me with a startup, and he says, sir, इसमें मेरे को बताओ blockchain कैसे डालें. I said, blockchain क्यों डालना है इसमें? सर उसमें ना मुझे investment मिल जाएगी, valuation भी मिल जाएगी. So what you have to be careful about, while these are technologies of the future, and yes, they will be part of virtually anything you do. So whatever you do, you'll have machine learning, you'll have deep learning, you'll have AI, whatever you do, right? Analytics. But you should not bring in technology purely for the sake of bringing it in. Because remember, technology should be brought in because it adds value, and you can't fool the investor. The investor is not an idiot.
Cogent point there, Dhruv. And I guess it's not just blockchain, there are a whole lot of other technologies out there too, which get bandied about. Okay, the next question is, I guess anyone could pick it up. Nile, if you want, you could try this. Where is the next unicorn going to come from? I guess the question is, which sector, which industry?
So, in my opinion, there are multiple ways, and there are too many biggies have already entered. But agri-space could be one. Definitely, a unicorn solving water-related problem. What Dhruji mentioned, we have got 600,000 villages. How do we, so there's a company in China called Mutya and Dianping, whose model was bottom top, rising from villages. And in a village of some 1,000 people, they sold 900 Nike shoes. So like in metros, people want to be different. They want to dress differently. In villages, they want to dress similarly. For example, I'm just giving you a random example. So how can you unify that? How can you go there? Because the lesser entry barriers, and there is a large chunk of population, and especially technology is catching up. 95% of India does have internet now. It is the cheapest internet in the world. So I feel Bharat is the answer for the next unicorn, rather than a sector. I would say in terms of demography, Bharat is where the next unicorn will come from.
I think very, very aptly said, Nile. And I echo that again. One of the other questions which has come up, and I see a reminder coming to me for that, is for potential entrepreneurs, in your experience, your cumulative experience, all four of you, what are some of the common mistakes, for want of a better word, that you've seen people make? And what would be your advice in terms of, trying to avoid those mistakes?
One, if I can answer this one, one mistake which I see, which I have seen, probably not any. If I build it, they will come.
So basically putting the product before the really.
Or assuming that, if you have a good product, people will come or people will use it. I think that is.
And honestly, that's nothing new. I mean, we've seen this even 40 years ago. I mean, a lot of times when you're building a product, you get so fascinated by what you're building, you forget who you're building it for.
Yes.
And that's something which even veteran entrepreneurs have been susceptible to. But great point out there. Amit, any thoughts from you on that?
Yeah, I think two things to further peel the layers of the onion on the thought. One is you are building what you want versus what your customers want. And two, trying to scale an unsustainable business, because that would lead to a pyramid of errors. So you need to ensure that my business is sustainable and then only scale it to get a good ROI for the shareholders and deliver the benefit that you intended to deliver to your customers. So these are the two key things that I see people making mistakes on all the time. And if they could sharpen the pencil on it early on, then it would lead to a saving of a lot of heartburn and a lot of venture capital dollars.
Okay. I think some very sound advice there, Amit.
I'll just add to that.
Sorry, Dhruv, just a sec. Viewers, I would request you to mute your audio, please, so that we have an undisturbed experience. Thank you very much. Dhruv, please.
Yeah, so there are lots of mistakes which people make. I'll just share a couple of them. One, I would agree with what Abhishek said. See, in my experience, when you have technical founders, now whether they are from IITs or RECs or NITs or whatever, doesn't matter, right? So when you have technical founders, there is a tendency to, I think like Jagmohan says, fall in love with your own product, make it an R&D product or project, and ultimately business takes a backseat. I'll just take a very simple example. About, I think in the year 2014, one group of youngsters, tech guys, engineers came to us and they had created a waterless urinal, right? And we examined it and we found it was a good design, very good design. And this presentation, the pitch was made to us as investors about 2 months after Prime Minister Modi's speech at the Red Fort, where he talked about Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, right? And he said we must build so many toilets. So suddenly we saw a phenomenal market opportunity because we said, boss, toilet to ban jayenge, pani kahan se aayega, right? And we were extremely excited. We asked them, boss, how will you sell it? Oh, we'll appoint distributors. Bahut badhiya. So anyway, we evaluated this design, their business in great detail, and we called them back to finalize in, I think, 1 month's time. So when they came back, they were looking even more excited than they were the previous time. So we said, what happened? They said, sir, we are now creating a female version of the same thing. So we said, hang on, boss, wo male version ka kya hua? Have you appointed distributor? No, sir, but don't worry, we'll do it when the female version is ready. Immediately, all investors said no, nothing doing. The problem is tech guys, if they don't understand, see, it is not a technology product, it's a business. If you cannot generate money out of it, it doesn't matter how good your product is. So that's, I think, the biggest mistake I've seen. Well, one of the biggest mistakes which I've seen tech people making. The other mistake which I found people making is that they tend to fool, I'm talking from the point of view of investor, they tend to fool the investor. So, they talk big, they will claim things which are not true. Once you've lost your credibility, you'll never get money from an investor. And, the environment is small, word spreads, but ye aadmi jhoot bolta, he tries to fool you, he will not get money. So these are two common things I've seen. I think you're muted. Jagmohan, you're muted.
Yeah, I said very valuable advice from all of you. One last question before we wind up. How do entrepreneurs face the challenge of communicating an idea that might be ahead of its time or is simply a new way of doing things? Any one of you?
So that is probably the biggest challenge that an entrepreneur would have, because, as I said, idea should be simple. Now, doesn't matter how complex the idea is, you should be able to, describe it in 2 lines and what you rightly say, 10 years old litmus test. So if you're able to explain it to 10-year or 70-year-old grandmother, it should go similarly the same way. So I would say, there has to be a lot of brainstorming. One could have an idea which could be, revolutionary idea, but how are you going to communicate? I would strongly advise to get some creative minds outside the industry, describe the idea, you jot it down that how long does it take for you to explain the idea to whosoever you're discussing it with, create a story, make a synopsis, come up with 1 sentence or 2 sentences, and that's where you should be able to kind of, because as an entrepreneur, we are dreamers, we are not realists in a way. So we would want to say, okay, male version of the toilet and female version of the toilet as well, versus this, that, versus, the same toilet can be fitted in a 5-star hotel as well, hypothetically. But idea is, take one product at a time, put it across, see the finances around it, and then go towards the next one.
Thank you, Nilay. I think that just about sums it up. I would like to thank all the panel members for taking out, I know, which is very valuable time from their schedules. Also, people, the viewers who were able to take out time to be with us. I would also want to thank Subramanian for setting this up. This webinar has been brought to you courtesy of Talgro.com, and in the interest of the 10-year-old litmus test, Talgro is an organization that helps empower people around the world to be more successful in their current jobs and also helps them transition to other opportunities in their career. Talgro does this by partnering with subject matter experts across the world and with some of the top universities and colleges globally. Do log into our YouTube channel. That's Talgro, Talgro. Subscribe for more such webinars. And thank you once again for joining us. Stay home or at work, but stay safe. Thank you.